Imagine giving a creepy old man $5 just so he stops following you to your car, only to find out he's not homeless at all. He has a house, a job, and he's been hunting women like this for over 20 years. And the worst part? He took a picture of my license plate, and the cops won't do a thing about it. Listen to how this nightmare started. Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back. Let's get right into it today. And just as a quick reminder, I know everyone is using fake voices now, but this is my my actual real voice. No AI garbage here. Today we're diving into a real life stalker story that is honestly just disgusting. So sit back, watch me build, and make absolutely sure your doors are locked. Let's go. So sometime in March 2025, I was delivering a catering order from my job to a doctor's office. As I was walking in the door to enter the vestibule, an older, kind of rough-looking man opened the second door for me and helped me get through. When I got inside, I kindly told him thank you and went to go to the front desk. But while approaching the desk, the man that opened the door for me starts trying to grab bags out of my hands, repeatedly saying, "I hope they tipped you good." Like, in my job description, I am supposed to be the literally only one touching the bags until I am given instructions by the receiving party. When I get to the desk where 3 women are sitting, I ask them where they want their food set up. One of them told me, through these doors all the way to the back on the left. The double doors had bright red letters saying, "Authorized personnel only." But none of the women working there escorted me to the back. The same man that opened the door for me is still yanking bags from my hands while I'm trying to tell him I can get it. He literally insisted on helping me carry the bags. At this point, I thought he might have worked there because no one else tried to help or walk me to the back. We get to the back where another woman is there waiting for me. I asked her if she wanted me to set everything up, and she told me she did. I start getting everything out, and the man that had taken the bags from me was getting stuff out too. When I finished setting up the table, I heard him ask the woman a question. Her response was, "No, but thank you, sir." At this point, I was fully aware that he did not work there. It didn't make sense for her to respond that way if they were co-workers. He also clearly did not look like he worked with me, as I was in a work uniform and he was in a greyish, kind of dirty sweatsuit. I start walking to the exit to get ahead of him. It was through the long, narrow hallway he followed me through before, but I hoped I could get ahead of him because he had a bit of a limp. However, he beat me to it. So I tried to go around him. He starts walking in a zigzag, literally cutting off any way that I could go to get around him. When we get to the end of the hall, back to the double doors, he stopped and looked at me. So I went to open it, and he stood really close beside me. We finally get back into the lobby, and I start to leave. He stops me and goes, "Let me ask you something. Did they tip you good?" I told him I didn't know and go to leave. He stops me again, starts the exact same way. "Let me ask you something," then says, "Can I have $3 to get to the bus? I did help you carry that stuff back there." I told him I didn't have any cash on me, but I could go look in my car to find some. At this point, assuming he was homeless, he looks at me like I offended him and says, "Oh no, I am 69 years old and I do not do that," as if I've just offered to have sex with him or something in my car as a thank you for his help. I told him no and said I could look in my car for cash and bring it back inside to him, but he followed me outside. I tried to run to my car and leave, but at this point he was watching me, so instead I grabbed $5 from my passenger side and give it to him. I try to leave again, and he stops me. "Let me ask you something. Why aren't you in school?" I told him I wasn't in school. He walks closer to me. "Let me ask you something. How old are you?" I lied. I told him I was 26. I thought maybe he'd back off if he thought I was older. He starts waving his arms in the air, making really loud sounds and laughing like he was shocked. He gets closer and goes, "Let me tell you something. Don't get offended. Don't get offended," he continues. "I thought you were, maybe, at least 19. Trying to laugh it off, I told him I get that a lot and start to leave again. At that point, I had been able to back up enough to get to my passenger seat again. I jump in through the passenger side and get into my driver's seat, and he's walked closer to my car. I lock the doors and start to back up. I look in my reverse camera and he's standing behind my car with his phone out, like he's taking pictures. During this entire interaction, because I was in my work uniform, he was able to get my name, my job, my work position, my car, and a picture of my license plate. I fully believed he was going to follow me back to my job. Thankfully, he did not. When I got home and told my family what happened, somehow my mum knew someone that just had a similar experience with a man of the exact same description. I looked it up on Facebook and was able to find a picture, and sure enough, same guy. A few days later, I ended up making a police report. Turns out, he's not homeless. He has a whole job and a house. The cop told me this man has been doing this same thing for 20 some years, only harassing women and scaring them into giving him money. People report him all the time, and literally nothing ever happens to him. Man, that is actually infuriating. Like, how does a guy get reported for 20 years straight and the cops do absolutely nothing? That is exactly why you can't trust anyone trying to force their help on you. Stay safe out there, guys. Alright, let's move on. Our next story is... Man, that is actually infuriating. Like, how does a guy get reported for 20 years straight and the cops do absolutely nothing? Stay safe out there, guys. Alright, let's keep it moving. Our second story takes us to a film studio in Hollywood, and man, you will never look at actors the same way again after hearing this. Listen closely. I don't know what compelled me to confess here of all places. Maybe all the years in the pews caught up to me, took in the good word, or maybe it is the lingering prognosis that has me crawling my way back to Jesus. I don't know. Either way, I am ready to talk. Father Lincoln says that sins are like roots. You don't fully get them up unless you dig out the hole, right down to where it all started. So, let's dig it all. Back to the first day of many mistakes. Oh, and lock the freezer after showtime. Come again? I said, finishing the last swirl of my signature. That's the last part of the gig, Russborough coughed out as he inhaled the last bite of his cronut. Studio closes just before sunset. You get here 15 minutes earlier, do your tasks, and lock the freezer no later than 7 p.m. Why does the studio own a freezer? He leaned back and swallowed. A deep breath wheezed in and out of him. Do you want this job? The chill from the previous night's air was fresh in my bones. I was out of gas and had only 2 blankets to my name. Yes, sir, I do. It won't work out if you are curious, believe me. Some doors, better left shut. I sat with that. Nothing about it sounded good. Then my eyes landed on the contract again, and the length of the zeros made me unsure. Lock it after 7. Got it? No later than 7, kid. That's important. Russborough reached into his bottom desk drawer and pulled out my gear. An outer light security hat, a metal clipboard case with a checklist, and a Glock 19. Whoa, I get issued a gun for this job? You got a problem with that? No, I just didn't expect it. Do studios typically have armed security? His eyes sat half open, unamused. Do now, he smiled. Listen, the talent we have here requires a bit of extra protection. If someone tries to get to where they ain't supposed to be, you use that, you hear? I left his office and made my way to the screening area, the Glock heavy at my side. I had fired plenty in my life, a lot less since leaving Beaumont PD, but still, you think you know what you'd do, how you'd act in a situation where you needed to pull that trigger. Then you get to the moment, and just about shit yourself. The screening room was dead, save for 3 individuals, a director, someone in an all-black suit, and the star on the stage. He was young, no more than 23. Dusty blonde hair, striking green eyes. I watched them do a scene. The actor, Thomas, was intense. At the end of the scene, he looked to the stage, right at me. His eyes gripped me like 1,000 pleading hands, begging me to stare. Gooseflesh broke out all over my body as he spoke his line. The jungle stole their lives, but I stole their souls with every bite. Cut, the director said. They wrapped up shortly after, not a single word or glance at me. I watched the room clear and knocked out my standard security checks. But the last 3 items on my checklist gave me pause. Let in the groupie, I read. I followed the instructions, making my way to a service entrance deep in the heart of the studio. I opened the door and heard a short scream as someone scattered to the ground. It was a young girl on her knees, pencil skirt, curly brown hair, red lipstick. Sorry, I said, helping her up. I didn't see you there. I gave her a once-over and saw she now sported a small splotch of crimson on her left knee. She told me her name was Regina. She was 20 and an aspiring actress. I know the actor, Thomas, she said. We met at a coffee shop. He was so sweet and asked if I could swing by after he finished rehearsal. I was sure Thomas did like some of her stuff, but I didn't have the heart to tell her. Next item was up. Take groupie to talent manager. As we turned around into the hallway, I all but crashed into the guy in the suit. He stood there like a brick wall. 6:43, he grunted. You're late. She was supposed to be with me at 6:35. Yeah, sorry, she fell on the way in. He snatched off his glasses and dropped to his knees, analysing her wound. He clicked his tongue in disapproval. Not good. What? It's just a scrape, she said. He stood up, looked at me and shrugged. We'll see, I guess. You are the one who's going to hear about it. I didn't know what that meant. I watched them walk off, a sinking feeling in my gut. Regina looked back at me before she went round the corner, waved and smiled. Then she was gone. One item left. No earlier than 6:55, but absolutely no later than 7 o'clock. Lock the freezer. I opened up the clipboard case, and inside was a massive steel padlock with a thick iron key. I glanced at my watch. It read 6:54. Shit. I gave a brisk jog further into the studio. 3 minutes to the deadline, I made it to a pitch-black staircase that descended into the earth, illuminated only by a single slit at the bottom, where the freezer door was barely ajar. I crept down. Sweat broke out on my neck. When I made it halfway, I heard voices coming from inside. What the fuck is this? What happened to her knee? This voice was new, deep, thunderous. She fell. That's what the security guard said, Suit replied. And what am I supposed to do with that? You know she won't heal. Chains rattled. Something massive crashed into the wall below. Worry plunged into my heart. My hand snapped to my gun as I descended faster. Calm down, Suit shouted. It's a scrape. She's exactly what you wanted otherwise. She was perfect, the monster's voice rumbled. She still is. Can you at least try it on? It was then that I made it to the door. My eyes searched through the crack. The freezer was filled with bodies, in neat, vacuum-sealed rows of industrial hangers like a macabre closet. Just beyond the door was Suit. Beyond him, Thomas stood in front of an unconscious Regina. Then, Thomas's head snapped up. His jaw separated from his skull with a brutal crunch. A 2-foot grey hand sprouted from his throat and used his forehead as leverage to pull the rest of it out. Another hand came out. Then, another. When the body that was Thomas crumbled to the ground like a skin suit without any bones, a writhing mass of floating hands floated before Regina. At exactly 6:59, the hands pried open her mouth and crawled in, inch by inch, cracking and breaking bone as it tunneled inside of her. My hand was glued to my gun. I knew I should run in, save her. That was my job, right? And once again I was here. All the power, all the authority, and all I could do was fucking nothing. Suit turned around to face me. He wore an expression of pure indifference. He shook his head, a warning. As the horror before me unfolded, I was right back to where I was 2 years ago as a cop, freezing at the door handle, my body, my mind, screaming in refusal. The seconds of the clock evaporated towards 7 p.m, and as the bones of Regina crunched under the weight of those hands, I made the exact same choice I did years ago. I locked the door. Alright guys, we've made it to the final story of the video. If you're still here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This last one, man, this one is pure nightmare fuel. It literally feels like a horror movie, but it's a paramedic's actual account of a call they took. Let's get right into it. Our shift was already well underway. 12 hours of non-stop pressure. Luckily, the night was shaping up to be quiet, at least as quiet as it ever gets when you're a paramedic. So far, we'd only had 2 calls. After that, nothing. No more calls. We pulled into a gas station to take a break, just me and my partner, Ruby. Ruby was almost 10 years younger than I was. When I first got her as a rookie, I wasn't thrilled. Training a young woman, being the one who had to show her the things the human body can do to itself when it breaks. It wasn't something I was eager for. But 4 years had passed since then, and Ruby had adapted to wading through blood, to arriving too late, or too early. Ambulance 18, we have a call. The radio crackled to life, pulling me out of my thoughts. A pregnant woman has collapsed. This is 18, I replied immediately. What's the situation? We have limited information, the dispatcher said. The husband called it in. Can you respond and check it out? Copy that, I said, flipping on the siren's signal Ruby. We're en route. We tore through the streets with the sirens screaming. The MDT guided us all the way to the edge of the city. The road turned rough and uneven, and the GPS started giving us increasingly unreliable positioning. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the static. The husband says if you follow the old road, the first dirt road on the left leads to it. First mansion down that way. A mansion? Ruby shot me a sideways look. We're heading to rich people, Jacob. Hope you dress classy. I let out a tired laugh and finally turned onto the dirt road. Farther ahead, the outline of a massive building began to emerge. In the darkness, it barely revealed itself, like a sleeping mountain. The mansion looked both ancient and imposing. Its massive walls stretched upward into the night sky. Every window was shuttered, yet a faint glow leaked out from behind them, like the eyes of some enormous creature watching us. "This is creepy," Ruby said flatly. "A little," I replied as I pulled the ambulance to a stop. The flashing red and blue lights washed over the mansion's grimy, time-worn walls. For a brief moment, the thought crossed my mind that I literally didn't want to go inside. Then, as if something had sensed our hesitation, the massive front door swung open. A young boy ran out toward us, waving frantically. "Hurry! Hurry!" he screamed in terror. When he reached the ambulance, he began pounding on its side with his small fists. The moment my boots hit the muddy ground, the boy grabbed my arm and started yanking me back and forth. "Please hurry, my sister, please hurry." He wore simple clothes made of old, heavy fabric. He looked like he had stepped out of another era. He couldn't have been more than 10 years old, and even then it was obvious something wasn't right about him. "Edmund!" a voice suddenly boomed from the doorway. "Get away from there. Don't you have anything better to do?" Only then did I look up. A man stood in the doorway, like an apparition. He was bald, older, dressed in a long black wool garment, like a priest's robe. At the sound of the man's voice, the boy froze. Without warning, he let go of me and took off running, like a dog slipping its leash. He vanished into the dark night, screaming for help. "Please, come inside," the man said calmly. "Forgive Edmund. He's a difficult case. It didn't quite..." His sentence trailed off. Ruby and I exchanged a look. We hurried up the mansion's steps, and the man turned and headed in. Ruby and I followed. The mansion felt even larger on the inside, and just as I'd suspected, it was completely empty. No furniture, no decorations, just an empty crypt. "Excuse me, sir," Ruby finally broke the silence. "Shouldn't we be moving a little faster? We were told a pregnant woman isn't doing well." The bald, thin man stopped short. He slowly and deliberately turned to face us, his deep grey eyes locked onto me. "Now that you're here," the priest said calmly, "she'll be just fine." He flashed us a wide grin. His yellow, unkempt teeth stood out sharply against his pale face. "What the fuck?" Ruby whispered. "Jacob, this is bad. This guy, the mansion, the kid, all of it." "Father!" a voice called from above, from the very top of the stairs. A young man stood at the last step. He was wearing an old-fashioned tuxedo. He hurried down and extended his soft hand. "Reginald," he said, "a pleasure, and thank you for coming. This way, please. My wife isn't feeling very well." Reginald moved through the empty hallways like a ghost. We were making our way down a long corridor when one of the old wooden doors suddenly creaked open. "Vivian, why are you out here?" Reginald scolded, stepping in front to block our view. A blonde little girl stood in the doorway. As cute as the girl might have been, her cleft lip made her appearance deeply unsettling. In the darkness behind her, another small figure with an oversized head sat up in a bed, peering out. "That's enough, children. Back to bed." Reginald ushered the girl back in and shut the door. "Jacob, this isn't right," Ruby whispered again. "We should call dispatch. Get the police out here." "For what, Ruby?" I hissed back. "There's nothing concrete to call the cops for. Let's at least check on the woman. If anything gets even more suspicious, we call for backup." "And here we are," Reginald said. We stopped in front of a door, guarded by a massive, dull-eyed man wearing huge, crooked suspenders. "Before we go in, please put on gloves and masks," Reginald said. "You know, pathogens and all that. We've tried to keep the room sterile." I looked at the hulking guard. He was casually picking his nose, then eating what he'd just pulled out. So much for sterile. Reginald pressed down on the doorknob. But the door didn't lead to a bedroom. It opened into an antechamber. Chairs lined the walls. People were sitting in them. The men all wore dark, heavy fabric. The women were dressed in long black skirts, but their faces were wrong. Melted noses, clouded eyes, mouths without lips, an aberrant, twisted congregation holding a group meeting. Looks like a lot of people live here, I said. Oh, they don't live here, Reginald explained. They came because of the baby. The twisted gathering stared at us with blank eyes as we moved through them. Reginald walked up to the next door and opened it. A woman's painful moaning drifted out of the room. Right this way, Reginald said. Ah, it's so dark in here. With that, he flipped on the light. It wasn't just the silhouette of a bed behind the curtain. Something enormous lay on it, like a pile of pillows stacked into a single mound. My dear, Reginald said, stepping toward the curtain. The doctors are here. They've come to help. Then, he pulled the curtain aside. I've seen a lot in my life, but neither Ruby nor I was prepared for this. A woman lay thrashing on the bed. Her hands were bound to the bedposts like a slave's, and her stomach was the size of a massive sack. Her skin was stretched paper thin, the veins beneath it looking as if they were about to rupture. It was so large that a full-grown man could have fit inside it. What the fuck? Ruby gasped in horror. I reached for her hand, but she recoiled, backing into the crowd behind us. Those things from outside had crept up behind us. Fuck you! Let go of me! Ruby screamed. Chaos broke loose. I spun around, grabbed Ruby's arm, and shoved away a short, lipless figure that lunged toward us. All right, everyone, back, I shouted. Easy now, Reginald said calmly. Just help my wife. It's your duty to help those in need. Like hell it is, I snapped. We're leaving, now. Reginald's eyes went wide. You can't do that. This woman has carried the Lord of Worlds for 3 years. You can't abandon her now. Jacob, Ruby whispered beside me, pointing at the woman on the bed. The woman's stomach rippled. It was starting. No, no! Reginald cried out in panic. Not yet. Ah! The bound woman screamed. Blood exploded from between her legs, spraying everywhere. Thin streams of blood spilled onto the floor like a spring. Reginald suddenly jumped back, bolted through a door at the far end of the room, and slammed it shut behind him. The crowd erupted into wailing. They clawed at their faces and heads, screaming and sobbing. Then, something appeared. Between the dead woman's legs, a hand emerged, grabbing her thigh and pulling itself free. A figure began to crawl out. It had no skin. Its flesh glistened red, with bones visible in places. Jacob, help me, the thing said, its voice coming from the woman's body. That was when panic took over. I bolted for the door, dragging Ruby with me. The crowd surged forward like a living tide. I threw myself at the door, the rotting wood gave way, and we crashed into the next room. But something was wrong. Ruby staggered. Blood spread across her white uniform. A knife was buried in her side. She managed a few more steps before collapsing. No! I screamed. I slammed the door shut and shoved the heavy wardrobe in front of it. Help me, Jacob, a voice cried from the other side. It was the thing that had just been born. Fists slammed against the door. They howled and pounded like animals. Dispatch, this is ambulance 18, I yelled into my radio. Send backup, a medic is down. The radio crackled, then went dead. The door burst open. The twisted figures flooded in. I fought with raw rage. I struck, kicked, and tore at them. 2 men rushed me at once. I backed up, tripped over a body, and crashed straight into the window. Under the combined weight, the glass shattered, and we went through it. I hit the muddy ground with a brutal impact. I lay there, barely breathing. Reginald messed it up again, a childish voice said gently. Edmund crouched beside me. He was holding a snail in his hand. But I'm sure he'll start over, the boy said, and crushed the snail in his bare fingers. And then everything went black. When I came to, dawn was already breaking. My body throbbed, but my legs still worked. I didn't go to the ambulance. I went back into the mansion. I couldn't leave Ruby up there, but to my shock, everyone inside was dead. I found the priest on the stairs, foaming at the mouth. I found the room filled with deformed children, all dead. By the time I reached the horrific room upstairs, every body lay sprawled across the floor. But Ruby was gone. Only a massive pool of blood remained where she had been, and she wasn't the only one missing. Among the dead, Reginald was nowhere to be found. That's when Edmund's words echoed through my dizzy mind, but I'm sure he'll start over. Wow, just Well, let me know down in the comments which of these 3 stories freaked you out the most, because honestly, I'm going to be thinking about that mansion for a long time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.